Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm taking on the ultimate budget challenge, eating for just $10 a week by shopping exclusively at Dollar Tree. And today I'm shopping in Lake Forest, California. The street I'm shopping on actually has 3 Dollar Trees, and there's a 4th one nearby. Here are the rules for this challenge. I'm going to be using basic pantry staples like the ones shown on this list. I think I'll probably just mostly be using dry spices though. And this video was inspired a couple weeks ago when I was talking to one of my viewers that said she only has one expensive store and then a Dollar Tree near her. Otherwise, it was quite some drive to get to any other stores. And she's actually not just a viewer, she's a supporter of the channel. So it reminded me that I haven't been to Dollar Tree for a while now, and I especially haven't done a challenge. So I'm going to focus on just getting some basic ingredients to last me throughout the week, and I'm going to try not to get sidetracked and purchase anything else that I don't need here. And I did notice on this trip that they've started pulling in the more expensive items into the rest of the store. At first I was like, oh, great price on that Country Time lemonade. But then I realized it was higher price. And I think they've stopped selling eggs, which is a real bummer. I do love their peanut butter. I'm sure that the smaller buttery homestyle mashed potatoes would taste better because I believe those have the butter and the milk inside of them already, but this is an extreme budget, so I am going to have to go with the larger one. But look at what I was noticing, that they're saying that the smaller one has 4 servings and the larger one has 8 servings, even though it's only 2 ounces bigger. I don't really see that that would equate, even if you're adding in milk. It should still be the same liquid amount. Anyway, I'm going to get the bigger one. And I'm also going to pick up some pinto beans just because this is the majority of the protein that I'm going to get for the week. I've never tried this before, and this looks interesting. Not only could I make sloppy joes with it, but I could also maybe make like a shepherd's pie with that and the lentils and the mashed potatoes. I think that'd be really good. I originally thought I wanted to get some tortillas, but they were out, so it kind of ruined my plans. And then I had to kind of pivot a bit and make a new plan. So I decided to get some bread, and originally I was going to get these hot dog buns as well. But then I realized that was going to take me outside of my budget. For the $10, I was able to get 8 items at Dollar Tree. So I've got the lentils and the pinto beans, which are going to give me a ton of protein and other nutrients. I have the 2-pound bag of rice, which I think is going to go a really long way this week. I've got the mashed potatoes, some corn, the sloppy joe mix, and I've got some peanut butter and some bread. I was looking for some oatmeal or something else like eggs, but they didn't have either. So I just got the peanut butter and the bread. And there are so many different things that we can do with these mashed potatoes. I got the peanut butter and bread for sandwiches, but you could easily make yourself some mashed potato sandwiches. One of my viewers likes a toasted mashed potato sandwich with mustard. And we could also use this and put this next to some toasted bread with a gravy over the top and maybe add in some beans in there for some protein. If you already have tortillas at home, you could make some of those yummy mashed potato tacos like I made in that one video where you just add in some cumin into the mashed potatoes. And of course, you can always add cheese and sour cream to that if you haven't. And like I said, I chose peanut butter and bread, but a lot of you would need to maybe choose something different for yourself. I noticed they have these little things of mayo, and I was having fun thinking of all of the single ingredient sandwiches that you could make with that. When I did that English tea sandwich video, it really opened my mind and gave me a new perspective on how easy it is to make simple but delicious and super cheap sandwiches. So for example, you could pick up a can of chickpeas and you could make a toasted mashed chickpea sandwich. You could make a curry chickpea salad like I made recently on the channel with just some mayo and curry powder. You could get some pickles and have some peanut butter and pickle sandwiches, which I think are really good. And for some reason, I've been thinking about mayonnaise and sweet pickle sandwiches, thinking that that would actually be a very good combination. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start meal prepping. If you haven't seen that video, I would advise you to go back and watch it, just because it's a great video to watch in summer, because there were a lot of ingredients that you can get that are discounted that make for delicious and inexpensive sandwiches. I'll link that video at the end of this video, and I'll also put a link to it in the description area for you. I'm planning on making half of this bag of rice now because I know I'll be able to eat that within the next few days, and then I'll make the remainder of the rice later in the week. I mean, you could do it both ways. You could make it and then freeze some of it, or just wait and make it later. Same thing with the beans. I'm making everything now just because I have very limited time schedule with my work. However, I'm going to have to freeze some of those beans because they wouldn't last in the fridge all week long. And I know a lot of my viewers cook like me, where they just do a lot of meal prep on Sunday and then have all of their dinners made for the week. I'm going to add something that I don't normally add to my rice, and that is ground cumin. I'm only going to use a small amount because I don't want it to be overbearing, but I just want a hint of the cumin flavor. So I'll add about 1/3 of a teaspoon. While my pinto beans are finishing cooking, I want to taste the sloppy joe mix. This contains tomatoes, green and yellow peppers, garlic, and onion. So I think that this is going to go a really long way in giving us a lot of flavor in at least 2 of our menu items. And I'm not sure if those are little chunks of tomato skin, or maybe it's even some onions or garlic. But yeah, that has a nice taste. It is very tomatoey, which I actually love. I think this is going to be a great addition to our meals. I am so excited that I got this many lentils for $1.25. Last time I made these, I made something so delicious, and I've got another recipe in mind for these, so I'm going to be trying that a little bit later. I do need to ration these, so I'm starting with just a few cups of lentils, and I don't know, maybe I should have purchased 2 bags of lentils. There's a lentil dish that I've had frequently at Indian buffets, and it's kind of mild, but it's kind of a soupy kind of lentil dish, but it's so tasty and it's excellent with basmati rice. And I don't really know how to make it, so I'm gonna have to look up some recipes, and unfortunately I don't even know what it's called. I'm gonna add just a little bit more of the sloppy joe mixture into this, and then I'm gonna let this simmer for a while, and then I'm gonna taste it. I told my son that I just wasn't gonna buy olive oil anymore because it was like $36, and besides, it'll encourage me to find other ways to make my food. I picked up these olive oil sprays that were kind of inexpensive just to have to fry my tortillas in. Those are the only things that I really like the texture when they're fried. However, as I'm saying this, I'm actually using a bottle that he picked up because I do feel like this does need a little bit of oil in it. And any kind of oil will work just fine here. I have almost a half of a can of the sloppy joe mixture left over, and I want to taste this before I add any spices to it. I do feel like you could eat this just like this and be very happy. However, there really isn't any smokiness to it, so I thought I would add a little bit of Spanish paprika and then just a little bit more garlic to it, because for me, that's something I can usually add more of just because I do love garlic so much. And then of course I'm going to add black pepper and give this a stir. Then I'm going to let this simmer for a bit. So I'm going to eat an open face sloppy joe sandwich, and I couldn't decide if I wanted plain bread or toasted, so I just did one of each. And I do think I like the toasted side better. This sauce mixture is very tasty. It's slightly sweet. You can definitely taste the garlic, the smoky paprika, but it's got that peppery flavor of the lentils. It's just a really nice combination, and best of all, it's very filling. You could take those two ingredients of lentils and sloppy joe mix, add those with some pasta like spaghetti. You could put it over the top of rice. You could have added it on top of hamburger buns, which would of course be the normal way to use it. And then you could also use it to make shepherd's pie, which you're going to see later in the video. So today is obviously one of my days off, and I'm just cooking all day long, doing some meal prep. And you may be wondering what I had for my breakfast. I basically just showed you my lunch. And for breakfast, I was actually so hungry that I just threw these ingredients together and I didn't do anything fancy at all. I just added some fresh beans, some corn, and some rice. Added a little bit of hot sauce and then ate that. It was simple and basic, but it was tasty. Had I picked up the black beans, which is what I really wanted to do, I would have had a beautiful bowl. However, the bags of black beans were smaller than the bags of pinto, and I really felt I needed to have more to last me all week. One of my favorite things to do with canned corn is to drain it and then fry it up until it's caramelized, and it becomes so delicious. And I usually use a lot of different kinds of spices on this corn. However, this time I decided just to use a little bit of garlic salt. Sometimes I use the Trader Joe's everything but the elote on it, but I know a lot of my viewers don't have that, so I opted for just plain garlic salt this time. And I was shocked at how delicious this was. I started by making half a can in this pan, and then I decided to go ahead and cook the other half as well, because this was just irresistible. And here's my meal prep so far. I've made 3 shepherd's pies, and I'll show you how I made those in just a minute. I have 4 lentil sloppy joes, and the 5th, which I ate. I plan to conserve some bread by using 1.5 slices of toasted bread per sloppy joe. I'll write out a menu in the description area of my video, but of course you might want to change things up a bit to suit your taste if you decide to do this meal plan. I have a ton of pinto beans and rice, and I also have that corn that I'm going to make the bowls with. I have enough ingredients for about 4 more of the bowls, which will be a total of 5 bowls with what I had. And then I'm planning for about 5 peanut butter sandwiches. However, I might use some of that bread for some different kind of sandwiches. I'll show you a little bit more on that later. And here's the amount of mashed potatoes that I have left over after the shepherd pies, and let me show you how I made those. I added some sloppy joe mixture to the bottom, but if you run out of sloppy joe mixture, you can always just add in some regular seasoned lentils. And I'm being very cautious with the corn here, so I'm just adding a small amount, and then the mashed potatoes. And I'm being kind of generous with the mashed potatoes because that's what's going to be so filling. And then when I first tried to heat these, I didn't add anything at all to the top. I just put it in my toaster oven, and it didn't turn out very pretty. So I realized what I needed to do is spray the top with a little oil, and I used my spray bottle because that was most convenient. But if you have a brush, you can just brush on the oil over the top, and it will make a really nice texture to the top of the dish. It helps to make it almost kind of crusty on top. It looks a little bit like I put cheese on there, but that's just what happened from adding the oil and the paprika to the top. I also wished I would have added a little bit of dried parsley onto the top. That would have looked pretty. And then I also tried with a little sriracha, and that was delicious as well. I was actually very pleasantly surprised at how good these turned out. And I think in the future I'd like to experiment a little with, after putting the mashed potatoes on top, then just adding a little bit of garlic salt, or maybe even in the future adding some everything but the elote to the top. I think there are so many different ways that you could play around with this recipe for someone that doesn't have many ingredients and make this phenomenal. I will say that these were a little bit on the smaller side, but these could have easily been cooked in a bigger dish. I had plenty of lentils left over for the week. And for the sloppy joes, I am going to be putting 2 of those in the freezer, and then I'll just pull them out and microwave them before I eat them. And here are how many mashed potatoes I have left over, and I do have some big plans for that. And because I did have mustard in my fridge already, I thought I would go ahead and try a mustard and mashed potato sandwich, just so I could let you guys know if I thought it was any good, because I haven't tried this, but I do know that some people swear by this, so I thought it would be fun to try. If you don't have mustard, there's a lot of different things that you could add here. You could add mayonnaise, you could add barbecue sauce, you could basically add nothing, but instead maybe add a little bit of dry seasonings to your mashed potatoes. Like you could maybe add some onion powder or garlic powder to the mashed potatoes just to give them more flavor, and then add them to your sandwich. You might want to make the potatoes a little bit more moist if you don't have anything to put on the bread. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pepper it and give this a try. And this was shockingly good. I actually sat here and ate this entire sandwich at 4:30 in the morning. It was so bizarre to be eating a mustard and potato sandwich at 4:30 in the morning, but it was so good that I couldn't stop eating it. And, you know, it doesn't take many mashed potatoes. So if you have those mashed potatoes, you can make them last a long time this way. And there are lots of different things we can do with the bread and the mashed potatoes. I decided that I wanted to try to make an onion gravy with onion powder instead of real onions. And I started this off by adding some oil to a pan and then adding some flour. There are a few things that I find especially helpful for extreme budget meal plans. One of those is soups. A second one is flour for making dough of all kinds. And a third one is gravy. If you're on an extreme budget, then you better know how to make gravy because it makes everything better. And there's so many different kinds of gravies that you can make. And my viewers that have watched my channel for a while have seen me make lots of different kinds of gravies. One of the gravies I like to make is a milk gravy. And that's with just flour, salt, water, and then you add milk in at the end. However, I've made it plenty of times without milk, and it tastes delicious just like that. You can also add in some bouillon, whether it be vegetarian bouillon, vegetable bouillon, chicken, beef, mushroom, whatever you can use. However, I thought it would be great this time to just add in some onion powder and make like a mock onion gravy. And I'm adding a generous amount of salt and pepper here because your gravy will be bland if you don't have enough salt. And I'm going to be very cautious with the amount of onion powder that I put in because onion powder is one of those things that you can easily overdo and then it's not going to taste good. Another thing to be careful with is don't over brown your gravy or you can scorch it and that will taste kind of nasty. Here I'm adding a little more flour in because I realized I didn't have enough. And if you're new to making gravy, this is just something that you will get the hang of after a while, which is the oil to flour ratio. Once my gravy has cooked for a bit, then I'm able to add in the water and then I whisk it together until it's the consistency that I want. And this is already smelling amazing. That onion powder just really gives this a great aroma. And it's kind of crazy how we can make something out of nothing with just a couple tablespoons of flour and some oil and some onion powder. Now I'm going to give this a taste and then adjust the seasonings. And when I tasted this, I realized I did need some more salt. So I added some more salt and it does have a nice onion flavor to me. It's not overpowering, but it's exactly what I want. You may want a little more onion powder in yours. That's for you to decide, but for me, this is perfect. When I was conceptualizing this meal, I was planning on having beans on top of the toast and then the gravy on top of that, because then you would have a nice high protein meal and it would be super tasty. But when I was plating this early in the morning, I just completely forgot to pull out the beans out of the fridge and plate these. I was just so excited to eat these mashed potatoes with the onion gravy and the toast. But again, you have plenty of pinto beans, so that would be a great option here for at least a couple meals. And I am going to try this with the mashed potatoes and the toast. And let me tell you, this was outstanding. This was so delicious. It's such an inexpensive meal that if you're eating on a budget, this definitely needs to be in your rotation, because I can guarantee you that your entire family is going to love this. Now, for if you're a meat eater, you could easily just add in some ground beef here, and that would be delicious. Some ground turkey, ground chicken, any kind of meat that you're going to add on here is going to be delicious. I made the rest of the rice, and this time I made the rice to be just white because I knew that I wanted to eat it along with some gravy. And I did want to show you, if your gravy sits out and it gets kind of clumpy or thicker, or it gets a film over the top, all you have to do is heat it up and just add a little bit more water and then whisk it out, and then it's going to be fine to use. And when I'm making gravy to pour over rice, I like to make it especially thin so that it will seep through the rice. If you make it too thick, it's just going to sit on top of the rice and it just doesn't seem to season it as well. See how it's pouring down into the rice? This is going to make it so savory and so delicious. And it looks like I made just enough gravy to go over the top of this. So again, you have lots of options for these meals. You're going to have to be careful with how many pieces of bread that you have. Generally, a loaf of bread has between 20 and 24 pieces, but when you're on an extreme budget, every piece counts if you're including that in part of your meal. So you definitely need to be organized and plan those out. Our goal was to get to 21 meals, and we definitely did that. Unfortunately, I did run out of time, so I didn't get to make the lentils and rice dish that I wanted to, but you certainly can. There are a ton of different things that you can make with these ingredients, like pierogies. I didn't have time to find the clip from the ones that I made, but you just use some flour and water, and you make some dough, and then you boil the pierogies in the water, and then if you want them a little crispy, you just fry them up. But there are a ton of other things that you can make with these same ingredients, so if you're planning this menu, you can always watch some of my other extreme budget videos to get some ideas. That's it, guys. I am out of time for this week. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week.
Morning has broken, my windows are open. Wanna feel the wind blow through my hair. Which way do I follow? What happens tomorrow? I turn to you and hope you can guide the way. Sometimes I give up, just wanna